lots of screaming, lots of applause for the start of the Broadway musical Six, the Tony Awards honoring Broadway's best, are June 12th. We've been talking to nominees about their work and their excitement. And Six, the musical, is up for 8 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. So with me right now, the creators of this clever, crazy, fun show, Lucy Moss and Toby Marlow. They are nominated for Best Original Score. Congratulations, 8 nominations for the show altogether. Lucy, Toby, how is it? How do you feel?
Oh my gosh, how does it feel? Unreal, completely unbelievable, and just so exciting, you know?
Sure. And Toby?
Yeah, even just hearing you say that now, and now like being here and looking out in New York from my window, I'm like, oh wow, it's actually, it doesn't feel quite real when you're in London, but now I'm like, oh wow, we're actually here to do this awards thing. That's really, really quite unbelievable.
It is the real deal. Well, let's go back to London. Let's go back to Cambridge University. About 2017, Toby, this came out of an assignment when you were in college?
Kind of, it wasn't to do with our studies. It was the university had like a musical theatre society that wanted to take an original musical to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and so that's kind of like how the show came about, because I like applied to do that, and then came up with like, oh, what if like the Six Wives of Henry VIII as a pop concert, and then called Lucy. I was like, do you want to write this musical with me? I've got this idea of the Six Wives of Henry VIII, but they're a girl group. It's a pop concert, and she was like, okay, yeah,
sure.
and so yeah, and then it was meant to be just 1 month that summer, and then it became
it just kept growing from the Fringe on and on and on, and here again 8 nominations of Tony Awards on Broadway. Lucy, I would think that you all grow up knowing the House of Tudor. It's I can be honest, it's we don't know every single thing outside of the notorious part of Henry VIII. So where was this? How easy did the information come? How much is truth? How much is you had to add a little bit to the music and the lyrics?
So I'm going to go ahead and say it's all as true as any kind of history book. I think that when we're growing up in sort of the UK, we learn about it quite young. So you sort of know divorce had died, and you sort of remember everything, but you don't really like. Well, for me anyway, I didn't feel like I knew exactly kind of everything, and then it was only going back to the stories and reading them and going, hang on a second, this has been told through a very male lens for so long. It's just actually a very patriarchal story. So how do we use the same facts and kind of re-evaluate them and reframe them as kind of from the voice of the women? So I'd say it's all factual, it's all true. It just, except for the fact that they're a pop group, that's the only thing that's not true.
Toby, so the audience, we're a part of this, as we just saw it. It's like a concert. Each queen vying, saying, hey, wait a second, I had it worse. So that's a great arc, too. Was that easy to come up with?
But we were thinking about this the other day, actually, because we knew that we had this idea of doing, an hour's pop. It had to be an hour long, and it was a pop concert of the Six Wives of Henry VIII, and we wanted them all to have a song at some point. And then we didn't have a lot of time to write it in, because we were studying for our finals and writing dissertations and stuff. And so Lucy came to my house. I know. Yeah. And so we wrote a lot of it kind of over this 4 days when Lucy came to my house. And on the first morning, we're like, okay, well, so how, structurally, how are we going to fit in all this history in an hour, or how are we going to do it so they all have a song? What's the vibe? And then Lucy was like, oh, well, if it's a competition, and they're and they're competing to be the leading lady of the girl group, and that gives them a reason to sing a song. And then and as you say, it's kind of the competition structure is oh, who had what do we all have in common? We all had married to this man, so whoever had the worst time wins. But then they kind of realize, competing with their oppressions isn't a fruitful endeavor.
Yeah. Spoilers.
Now, let's listen right now, because every queen, you help us along, introduces herself. So let's listen to 2 of them now. Catherine Howard, I forgot her there. I love that, and I love each one of them seems to also have a style, personality, and dancing. How did you model that?
So that was kind of a choice we made way back in the day to kind of make sure that they were all modeled after different pop stars. And so and we kind of chose them based on sort of what we wanted to talk about from their story. So, for example, Catherine of Aragon, we knew that we wanted to talk about how sort of strong and brave, etc. she was. So we were like, well, obviously she has to be kind of like Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez, and then so like in having a sort of palette of pop stars that we were writing from, we then kind of created their sort of like pop identities and songs, which obviously then feeds into the choreography. Although nowadays our kind of cast is actually very amazing in that they take their own sort of inspirations from different pop stars. So actually the ones that we originally wrote as the sort of inspos aren't the only ones that you kind of you see in the show. The
timing of this, and I know theater is so important to you. You know, the pandemic. You came here, and as I understand, what is it, about 5 o'clock, you guys were ready for opening night, and then Governor Cuomo said, no, Broadway's stopping because of the pandemic. To finally open, and let me just say, I went to a rehearsal, and I went to, I believe I was at the opening night. How could I forget that? I mean, just the excitement and the, we're finally here, let's give this uplifting, despite divorced, beheaded, and died, give this fun experience back. What is that feeling like for you, Toby?
It feels really fantastic. It felt really wonderful that everyone who works on the show, both on stage, at the theater, behind the scenes, in a building somewhere else in New York on the show, just like was able to like be working again on the show. That felt really, really wonderful. And also just to have audiences back in the room and cheering, and it was a really wonderful feeling, and it was a lot less stressful than the first, what was meant to be the opening. We were all like, well, I wonder if we're going to get this virus if we go ahead with the opening.
No.
And so it felt a lot more safer and nicer in that respect.
It's important to mention too, all-female cast, all-female band. Lucy, what are we saying here?
We're saying that, you know, we as women have a voice, you know, and that we can kind of be funny and hilarious and hold everything together ourselves. And just like, it's just really it's about making, the whole show has always been about making space for voices that aren't often heard or that we don't usually hear from or that are marginalized, I suppose. So this is really, it's really empowering, I think. I find it empowering watching them all on stage.
I do too. Yeah, and you have empathy, and we're on our feet. And Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss nominated your musical 6 for Best Musical, and you both for Best Music and Lyrics. Congratulations! Thank you. I'm so happy you brought this. I'm happy you brought this to Broadway.
Thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you.
It has uplifted me. Best of all to you at the Tony Awards. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can watch our special Broadway and Beyond at the Tonys Thursday, June 9th at 7 p.m. on CBS 2, streaming here on CBS News New York. And be sure to watch the 75th Annual Tony Awards live from Radio City Music Hall Sunday, June 12th. Coverage begins 7 p.m. streaming on Paramount. Plus, 8 p.m. the awards ceremony starts on CBS 2. And for more information about all of Broadway's Tony Award nominees, go to our website, cbsnewyork.com.